Shalom, and welcome to this week's edition of Why Does This Torah Portion Matter? This week's parsha is called Toldot, which means generations, and it talks about the generations that came after Abraham and Sarah. And it starts with Isaac and Rebekah having twin children, Jacob and Esau. Now, I'm an only child, but I'm sure that those of you who have siblings can relate to a lot that's in this Torah portion, certainly with regard to sibling rivalry. And that's a little bit of what I want to talk about today. Toward the beginning of the portion, there's a famous scene in which Jacob convinces his brother Esau to sell him his birthright because Esau was the firstborn son just by a smidge. And so Esau has the birthright. And Jacob is able to, in some ways, trick it out of him. And I'm going to read those verses in English. One day, Jacob was cooking a stew, and Esau came in from the field. Esau was famished, and he said to Jacob, "I'm famished. Let me gulp down some of that delicious-looking stew." Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright here and now." Esau said, "I'm so hungry, I'm going to die. So what good is this birthright to me?" I paraphrased a little bit for brevity, but essentially, Jacob gets the birthright. And I think this is a perfect example in the Torah, and I think the first example of how something is allowed, but not the right thing to do. And we talk about this all the time, I think, with politics, that something may be legal, but that doesn't make it moral. And here we have the same thing in that our tradition suggests that Jacob takes advantage not only of Esau's starvation, and I know what it means to get hangry sometimes, and sometimes we do things that we later regret or we make decisions we don't really mean, but also Jacob is a little bit smarter than Esau, and he takes advantage of it in some ways. And it's not until much later in the Torah that we get the beautiful precept of not placing a stumbling block before the blind. But here, Jacob, who is our ancestor, and we have a lot of things in Jacob that we look up to as an exemplar, but I don't think this is one of them. But that being said, I think it reminds us and challenges us not to take advantage of people, not to place a stumbling block before the blind, and even though we can do something, it doesn't always mean that we should. And that is why this Torah portion matters.